Hey, what's going on, ladies and gentlemen, and ponies and bronies out there? I'm Rarity here, and I'm from the likes of the Maxi Toys videos. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to more Let's Play of Mega Man 7 for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, or Super Famicom for those who lived in Japan. Or in this case, if you want to call this Rockman 7, but that's just how it is. And speaking of such, welcome back for some more of the Mega Man Marathon. I forgot to actually mention about this in the opposite way. But apart from that though, I think I might as well be okay with this specific episode alone. So anyways, last time we actually did manage to done the opening intro stage, and also we've managed to take on 4 Robot Masters by the forms of Freeze Man, Burst Man, Cloud Man, Junk Man, and we actually did explore through Robot Museum to able to actually take on for that particular mini boss fight of any sort of all that. And then, yeah, that's all I can really say about this for the most part. So today for this episode, ladies and gentlemen, is the fact that we're going to be taking on 4 more Robot Masters, because after when you were trying to deal with the Robot Museum level, well, there are going to be a lot more Robot Masters to deal with at this point, folks, because it's especially noticeable that we're going back into the traditional Mega Man formula again. So even I know that the next Robot Master we're going to be taking on is the forms of Turbo Man. And from the get-go though, is the fact that you're getting chased by this little robots right here that is actually driving this particular mobile of all things. And then we need to take this mobile down before we're able to continue on. So, as far as this stage goes, it's more likely represented by the forms of the garage of all things, like all tires and pretty much every single tire is everywhere, because as far as this stage applies, is known for, which is obviously this stage is called Turbo Man after all. So yeah, to get the suggestions for this point here. So, and this part can be very tricky for those of you who have a first time playing this level though, and because of that though, if you accidentally get touched by the tire, well, it'll bounce off of from you. So even then though, you have to stay perfectly sharp on that one, especially noticeable for that death of spikes over there. Which, I think I honestly will not recommend the Super Adapter on this level though, or in this case, in this specific section, because, well, you'll be bouncing off all over the place with all these tires in mind, and yeah, if you fall down to that tire over there, it takes you to the bottom floor, so even then, I suggest you avoid that at all times. And speaking of such, let's go ahead and use the Super Adapter, so that way we can able to bypass not only tires, but also some death, pit of spikes. So that makes it very obvious there, so even then we'll just let that enemy go by. So yeah, today was actually forms of the 14th of August 2018, and I do apologize for the fact that in the first part of Mega Man 7 was actually gone uploaded significantly late. I think it's most likely because of how the fact that the processing of uploading stuff schedules wise has gone pretty late, so we need to get back into this though. So anyways though, it's important to notice that if you stand right onto this platform over there, with the traffic lights and anything, then we get ourselves this little particular item over there, which appears to be a power punch, but it forms of only accessible for the Super Adapter, which even then, in order to actually get that power up, is by the fact that we need to use Rush Search until you're able to actually get to that spot, and then you would able to actually find that power up. So, very easy to able to actually find it, and not too much of a big of a deal. So, anyways, before we continue on, there's actually a secret alcove onto this invisible wall, and that way we come across into, what else? Proto Man. Mega Man, have you collected the R, U, S, and H circuit plates? Well, yes I did. Cool, but remember, the Super Mega Man armor is too bulky to allow you to slide, which is very obvious. Good luck, Mega Man. I'll see you later, if you survive. Well, we don't know what stage we're gonna be bumping into each other for this point, Proto Man, but yeah, I'm up to the task. So anyways though, there's a dead end here, but obviously that we need to go back, so even then though that we could... Oh, goodness gracious, almost fell off. Thank goodness though, because even then though, much like in any other Mega Man games, that you can still survive while dropping, unlike in new forms of the NES game called Ice Climber, that you can't afford to fall off into your death situation, because you know how the fact that you will potentially going to die for that point. So anyways, This level somewhat feels a bit similar to the likes of how it does it in Quick Man stage from Mega Man 2 because of this one section, because even then, we need to obviously avoid those flames, just like how it does in any fire stages, but also this sequence. Do you know about this sequence? It's almost very similar to the likes of how it does in Quick Man stage from Mega Man 2, but except the fact that it's all in fire instead of laser. So, if that's the case, regrettably, then, you know, you get the suggestions for this point. So anyways, let's go ahead and just ride on to the specific truck lorry of all things, which is very interesting to say the least. Even though it's almost like very similar to the likes of Charge Man stage from Mega Man 5, except the fact that we're not going to be exploring inside the train. Instead, we're going to be actually hopping onto the actual truck, or the lorry, as far as I'm trying to say for this much. And this particular mid-boss fight, all to do is basically we need to attack his eyes, because even then, as soon as you do enough damage onto his eyes, then you would able to actually demolish him in due time. So, yeah, it's not that too much of a big of a challenge to this guy, other than we need to dodge a lot of those enemies come fly about from the right to the left, which, kind of think about it, these enemies are almost very similar to the likes of how it does in one of those enemies from Sonic the Hedgehog 2, with the forms of this guy Chase levels, in the forms of, you know, one of those turtle-based enemies from the Badniks. Well, to be fair, I haven't really exactly looked upon these Badniks recently because, well, I haven't really researched on those kinds of stuff. So anyways, let's go ahead and move on and explore to, probably the most, pretty cool boss fight to begin with, even for Robot Master. Now, I know what you're thinking, that his weakness might be exactly something related to Shade Man, which I'm probably not going to show that off until we get to the very end of the game. But for the sake of time, we'll just go ahead and use the Super Adapter for this Power Punch, so that way it'll do an insane amount of damage with the Turbo Man. Turbo Man can be slightly similar to how it does it from both Fireman type of Robot Masters, because he uses his flames, because as you can see from my damage output, even though my invincibility frames has gone a little bit more too laggy, that's only because of the emulation for the Legacy Collection series. Even for my capture cards do weird all kinds of things. And just like in the forms of the Airman stage from Mega Man 2, even an Airman boss from Mega Man 2, that's the best strategy. If you manage to able to get sucked in, then you would able to actually go approach behind him. Although, kind of thinking about it though, we've already finished with him, no problem, because as you can see, the Power Punch can now actually hold on to any kinds of stuff. So even then though, this could be very handy for you though, especially noticeable if you're having a hard time with any other Robot Masters in Mega Man 7, then you would able to deal with these Robot Masters just fine. And from here, we can now finally get ourselves the 5th Robot Master weapon, and that's the forms of the Search Wheel, which is basically a flammable weapon. Just like how it does it in, you know, the Fireman's weapon from Mega Man 1, and especially noticeable by the forms of Heatman's weapon from Mega Man 2, and, you know, previous Mega Man games as far as weapons do manage to count for that. So, anyways though, I'm gonna have to able to actually just manage to configure one of my buttons real quickly, because since I'm gonna be playing this on the PlayStation 4 version, if you manage to press the touchpad, then that way you can able to actually access to this particular secret, you know, Otto or Eddie shop. Or if you ever play this on the Super Nintendo, it's by simply we need to press the select button. Welcome to Big Eddie's. I'm Otto, Dr. Light's #1 student. So yeah, this is a new character introduced in the forms of the Mega Man series by the forms of Otto, which even then we've already saw him in the intro stage. Unfortunately, I've lost one of my bolts and seem to have a couple of screws loose. If you'll find it for me for a Hyper Bolt, I would appreciate it if you bring it back here. Anyway, I'll try my hardest, and I'll make items out of the way. Other bolts will be found, and select the items you need. So, basically, Big Eddie is basically a shopping menu, which is basically depends on what bolts you be collecting. Because as you can see, I've got myself 294. That's only because of how the fact that you know the easiest way you can get a whole bunch of bolts is by simply we need to go into, you know, the Cloudman stage, and you have to simply just manage to defeat those mini birds enemies from the forms of that stage. That way you can get a whole lot more bolts you can get. So even then though, let's go ahead and buy. Anyways, so even then though, let's go ahead and buy the extra 1-up. And you do have all kinds of items you can buy. You can either buy extra 1-ups, or even especially noticeable for energy tanks, and especially noticeable with Beat the Bird, but we can't access to Beat the Bird yet, because obviously we do not have him at the moment. Because just like in forms of how it does in Mega Man 6, that we do need to able to actually get him for certain conditions. And also we've actually come across into this two familiar items, which are essentially both the W tank and the exit item, which the exit item allows you to able to actually reach at the very end of a level without need to able to go ahead and just run straight forward, and all you have to do is just do just as that. And finally we have ourselves the W container, which actually provides a weapon energy, so even then there could be something related to later on that becomes very, very handy. So anyways, now we're going to be moving on to the 6th Robot Master in the forms of Mega Man 7 and as the forms of Slash Man. Now this stage almost feels inspired by the forms of how it does it in Jurassic Park, because as you can see, there are a whole bunch of dinosaurs all over the place, and as a result of that tradition, well, we can able to actually just manage to explore the actual, Jurassic Park inspired world. So even though you do have a jungle environment, and especially noticeable how the fact that, oh yeah, take a notice from, in Super Mario Bros. 2 USA, that we have to jump from platform to platform if you manage to step onto these platforms, as you can see from the waterfall. And that way you should able to actually just to be very cautious, and you have to stay perfectly sharp when it comes to doing a lot of platforming heavy. So yeah, as I mentioned to ponies and bronies before, today was actually forms of the 14th of August 2018. I'm actually really quite surprised because of how the fact that we've actually in a halfway point, or almost at the halfway point rather, at the August month. And especially noticeable how the fact that I really could not believe we're actually breezing for these classic Mega Man games within just one sweat. Even with the actual sweat, if I would just have to say that precisely. And by the way, this section can be very dangerous because it has, not only because it has bottomless pits, but also spikes that instantly kills Mega Man, so in fact, this particular sequence almost feels a bit similar to the likes of Brightman stage from Mega Man 4, that we need to ride onto those specific robots until we're able to actually just go ahead and proceed on things. So that could be something very, very useful in some scenarios, and if you want to get that energy tank, well, by all means you can able to get that with the super adapter, so even then you can able to actually use that as much as you please. Some people usually think that this is the best entry of the forms of the Mega Man series. Well, usually there are some rehash moments here and there, but even then we'll get to that at the ending portion of Mega Man 7 with the forms of the end of the playthrough of Mega Man 7. So, and considering it takes you to, it takes you to the normal route, so we're not going to go back down there because, well, we don't want to instantly die by the spikes below. So anyways though, let's go ahead and continue on. Oh my goodness, there's a huge dinosaur! I did not expect it that particular robot dinosaur looks super freaking huge. But ultimately though, that it takes really long time to deal with him because he has a lot of health. And all you have to do is basically we need to shatter it to its mouth, or the part of its mouth I should say. And I think what makes this level is a little bit longer, well, it's not that too long compared to how it does it in the forms of Shade Man stage, because we'll get to that stage when we actually get to that point. So even then, for the most part, this stage is not that give me a lot of trouble with it whatsoever, although the only time it makes it tricky is the forms of the dinosaur mini boss fight. In fact, one thing I should probably explain about this actually is the fact that Mega Man 7 loves its own mini bosses, because even then they always attempt to summon them in almost every single level in the majority of Mega Man 7. Once we get into Mega Man 8, and especially noticeable for Mega Man and Base, and even especially noticeable for Mega Man 9 and 10, well, we'll find out sooner afterwards. So, anyways, we've got these bee-looking robots, which even though if you accidentally just manage to knock the beehive, then it'll actually just manage to summon those bees around. And with the forms of how the fact that with the secret hints that that Proto Man actually tells us to able to go next, but in forms of how the fact with this particular level itself, well, you have to use the search wheel until you're able to actually just burn those trees down. And then once you deal with that, use the super adapter and climb all the way up to the ladder, and boom, there you go, we got ourselves Beat the Bird, which apparently he's got trapped inside a cage, which I don't know if that could be represented for, but I could assume that because of, you know, Dr. Willy did manage to able to kidnap Beat the Bird again. So, I guess that makes the point. So anyways, let's go ahead and switch over to the Mega Buster because that's all you need to do to able to deal the damage on the cage. And that way, we finally managed to free Beat the Bird. So that way, we can now actually use him once again, just like how it does in both Mega Man 5 and especially noticeable for Mega Man 6. However, except this time around though, is the fact that Beat the Bird can actually do a different thing for once this time around. Because rather than just manage to attack the enemies, even attacking bosses, unlike in both Mega Man 5 and 6, instead, he will actually decide to able to help you out throughout the level. So that way, if you manage to fall down to the bottomless pit by complete accident, then you would able to actually just go ahead and just guaranteed that you would able to actually just let Beat the Bird help you out. So that's a very useful Beat the Bird ever since then. So now let's go ahead and move on to probably the more trickier robot masters in my opinion, and that's the forms of Slash Man. Slash Man is very much exactly like how it does any forms of Freeze Man, because he keep on maneuvering itself way too fast more often, so... And also, as you can see here, is the fact that I've managed to get onto my pot of jar, managed to stuck onto my head, and the reason being for that is because if I managed to let that jar broke apart and it managed to drop into my head, that way I cannot able to jump or even just shoot. So even then though, this boss almost feels exactly like how it does in Freeze Man boss battle, because even then, although except the fact that it makes it a little bit more ridiculous at the same time to dodge every single jars, because of that though, if you manage to step onto these little pile of goop on the floor, you'll also manage to able to realize that you cannot maneuver at all. So yeah, that was Slash Man. So even then though, that is very tricky to deal with, to be honest. But as long as you're able to get your accuracy with the actual jumps and stuff, then you will be fine for the most part. And now we turn back to Dr. Light's lab yet again. But obviously we're going to be able to actually see what's the new weapon that we've got. Well, we've already got the forms of, just only limited range. Okay, I might be alright with this. But even though we've got ourselves the Slash Claw, which basically functions the same way as it almost feels a bit similar to the likes of how it does it in the, you know, the Mega Man X games. They usually just have like Zero's sword swinging slash, which even then it feels slightly similar to that specific ability, but except that, well, Mega Man can do just as that. So, you know, you get the drill. But anyways, folks, now we're going to be moving on to Spring Man stage, and this stage almost feels a bit slightly similar to how it does it in Plant Man stage for Mega Man 6, because as you can see, that the main gimmick about this level is the fact that once again we need to utilize springs of all that, and if you manage to jump at the right time on the springs, then you would able to bounce higher, but if you don't jump at the right time, then you will bounce a little bit too light. So even then know that, well, if you ever played Plant Man stage before, you know how this stage plays out. Except the fact that I found this stage to be a lot more easier sometimes compared to how it does in Plant Man stage, because there aren't any cheap moments, I don't feel like. But even then though, that's all I can really think about for the time, so even then though, this stage almost feels a bit more accurately a slingy dog type of stage like this, because you remember watching Toy Story 1, 2, and 3, that, you know, Slinky Dog was actually forms of the spring, but when a dog, well, that could be something almost entirely related to that stage. But even then, no, that's besides the point. And I should probably realize about something is the fact that Mega Man 7 did manage to came out on the exact same day, or the exact same year rather, as Toy Story came out. To be more specifically, the first film in the series. See, even then, because the first Toy Story film came out in 1995, whereas in this game that came out on the exact same year, but the only difference being is the fact that with a different month. So, I think that can be pretty much summarized it for the most part. So, anyways, so we need to go from this higher upper route because of this secret pathway we can take, and in addition to that, even though I keep on getting owned by the Jack-in-the-Box type of platform, but what we need to do is the fact that, not to mention I've got myself another extra life, but also because we need to go this way in the first place and get ourselves the Hyper Bolt. And that's what Otto seems to mention about this, because even then, if you grab the actual Hyper Bolt, well, something else will about to be happening if you manage to obtain that specific item. And even then though, that we'll get to that as soon as we're able to finish this stage in particular. In fact, most of these stages in Mega Man 7 could go a little bit more longer this time around, because of how the fact that, well, you know, in addition to the mid stages, and especially noticeable with the forms of the opening intro stage for once, but even then though, until Mega Man 8, and especially noticeable for Mega Man and Bass, then we would able to actually expect it to able to actually just to classify, to able to actually just to see how long these games will actually hold up with. Whilst when we get to Mega Man 10 and, well, to be more accurately, Mega Man 9 and 10, well, you know, it might actually going back onto somewhat of a shorter length. So, I think that's pretty obvious for this point. Can you get out of my way, please? Please, I just want to move on. Thank you. Jeez, that particular robot can get out of my way sometimes. But anyways, let's go ahead and use the slash weapon and able to take on Springman. And this particular robot master might actually be one of the easiest robot masters to deal with, because if you time your slash at the right time, then you would able to deal the amount of damage to the forms of Springman, because it just takes no effort whatsoever. I mean, all you have to do is just basically every time you hit Springman, then it's your chance to able to actually just to dodge his fist attack, and it does that rinse and repeat. So he bounces all over the place, and sometimes he does that specific technique, and that's all there is to this guy. But even then, again, he just takes no effort whatsoever with this particular robot master itself. But even then, I'm guessing that because of how the fact that, well, you know. And there he goes. There goes Springman. So we've only got one more robot master left, and now see forms of, well, we'll get to that as soon as we're able to get to that point, even though I've technically already spoiled the actual final robot master is, so I might as well able to apologize for this part. So, anyways, we'll go back into Dr. Light's lab yet again, and we have managed to get ourselves the Wild Coil, which even then, we'll get to that specific name as soon as the actual dialogue sequence is about to be done and over with, even though it tells you about the hints and everything. But other than that though, we've got ourselves the Wild Coil, which is basically, it's more accurately, a springy projectile weapon. But enough about that, so let's go ahead and get into, but first before we get into the last robot master, we need to give the Hyper Bolt to Otto right here. And, well, he managed to get it, so that's my bolt. Thanks. It fits perfectly. So he managed to get that in, and as soon as that bolt gets in, then he'll pretty much go do the actual pose of ready for action sequences. Well, not literally though. Now I can work at full power. Look, a new weapon just for you. I can now make items using half the normal number of bolts. So this means is the fact that we've got 50% off with the forms of some of these items prices. So for instance, that normally in the extra lives department, they normally cost about like, let's just say 40 bolts, but now it's been dropped to 20. And similar to how it does it from, well, yeah, that's all I can really notice about this. You can also manage to get yourselves Hyper Rocket Buster, or even the Weapon Energizer, and even with the Rush Jet and Rush Surge on the actual Bolt store. But to be honest, I think I've already got those abilities ever since in the main adventure of all things. That's only because of how the fact that we've already know what the actual 100% is. So now it's taking on to the forms of the last Robot Master before he taking on Dr. Willy, and we can able to actually see how this will goes. Shade Man, which is basically a Halloween themed type of level like this, because well, as soon as we start this level off, then it's all pitch black all of a sudden, but then as soon as you jump right in, the moon starts to rise. So even then though, now we can actually see what's going on. So this level almost feels inspired by the forms of another Capcom game of all things, but the forms of Ghosts and Goblins, or in this case for this matter, Super Ghouls and Ghosts for the Super Nintendo. Which these two games are by far the most toughest platforming games I've ever going to be playing through. And let me tell you right off the bat though, I'm probably not going to tackle for those two games, because these games are pure heart for arbitrary reason. But I think it's most likely because of trial and error, enemies that are trying to come out of nowhere, controls that may be super stiff in the forms of the first game, in the forms of Ghosts and Goblins, and especially noticeable how the fact that the game is constantly chugging throughout the entire main adventure, especially noticeable in the first Ghosts and Goblins, whilst in the forms of the Super Ghosts and Ghosts did manage to improve a little bit, but the ending requirements is a bit ridiculous because you have to beat the game twice until you're able to actually find yourselves a bracelet upgrade. Which, by the way, the bracelet upgrade can be only be required to be able to actually deal with Emperor Persadius in the forms of, in Super Ghosts and Ghosts. And then in the forms of Ghosts and Goblins, you need to able to get yourselves a shield item equipped. In the forms of how it does it in the first game, to able to actually deal with Ashtaroth. Which, even though you have to beat the game twice also to actually make yourselves the best ending of the game, because, it's an illusion trap that visited by Satan in the first game. So, anyways, enough about that. So anyways, let's go ahead and just keep on grabbing those little bolts, as you can see right there, for these collectible environments itself like this. And taking on the mini boss fight in Shademan stage, we have is the big pumpkin robot. Now, there are two different pathways you can take. You can either manage to able to take on the inside part of the actual pumpkin robot, or you can able to actually deal with the actual huge body of itself. Now, I'm going to be taking on the bottom route first because, well, they're actually going to give you something a little bit more worth noting for, especially noticeable that since we've actually come across into Proto Man twice in the forms of this game so far, and that way we can able to actually see what's going to happen. So, but since I've managed to take down the inside portion of that specific pumpkin robot, this way it allows me to able to go into the bottom route. Whilst if I manage to take down the main pumpkin robot, and then able to actually take me to the right route instead. So if we come to the invisible wall here, which can be easily just managed to bypass, and we have this familiar whistle once again, and there's Proto Man. So brother, you are not as weak as I thought. Let's see which of us father made stronger. In this case, we have a fight against one-on-one fight against with Proto Man himself, just like how it does in the forms of Mega Man 3. Except the fact that it is much more of a challenge than the likes of how it does it where he keeps jumping and shooting all over the place in Mega Man 3. But even then though, that it might be a little bit tricky for first time players because he just keep on sending us into forms of random patterns, because sometimes you can either do a charge shot or just the actual mini shoots and stuff like that, like see right there. And you have to memorize the actual pattern of this sometimes, because even then, if you do not pay attention to that whatsoever, your health won't gonna get wrecked. And as a result of that addition as well, you can't really see what the actual health bar is for Proto Man, so you have to figure out that you need to do a best damage output, and that's the forms of the Mega Buster charge shot itself. Because if you manage to able to actually just do that in just at the right moment, then you would able to actually deal an amount of damage to the forms of Proto Man. So anyways, let's go ahead and use our energy tank really quickly, just in case if I accidentally die here, even though that again, I only have to carry like 4 energy tanks, just like how it does it back in Mega Man 2 and stuff like that. So, even though that's not much else to say about Proto Man as far as the actual boss fight goes, but even then as soon as you do enough damage, then he'll actually say something. Maybe you are the superior model, Mega Man. Oh, am I? Here, take this with you. Is this your Proto Shield? You can't give this to me. It's okay, take it. And watch your back. So once you deal with Proto Man for this specific fight, then we got ourselves another item, but in forms of the Proto Shield, which can be provided if someone feels a bit similar to how it does it in the shield ability from the forms of the Legend of Zelda series, to be more accurately, Zelda 2 The Adventure of Link. Because in that game, if you manage to able to actually carry your shield this whole entire game, then you would able to block your projectiles, which can be same applies for the Proto Shield, because even then, as soon as you see how this will happen for this little particular jerk off here, there you go, it actually protects you from these specific projectiles. So even then, that could be very useful in some scenarios, but even then, I only rarely use that, but even then, that's why I'm essentially trying to able to actually go for 100% completion, but you know, you get the drill from this point. So I do know there's actually a secret to this specific stage in Shade Man stage. Now, how the fact that you can actually hold down the, I would say square button or the Y button. I haven't really tested out yet, because I haven't really played that much in Mega Man 7 these days, because the first time I've ever experienced Mega Man 7 is the forms of the Nintendo Wii U's Virtual Console version, because, you know, Nintendo Wii Virtual Console version didn't saw the light of day along with Mega Man 6. That's only because of how the fact that, well, I just don't know for the sake of reasons. By the way, you need to use this search wheel to able to light up the room, just in case if you can't see what you're doing in the dark, then you would able to actually lit up the candle, so even though that if you manage to lit that candle, then you would able to see what's gonna happen. So, similar to how it does in the Great Cave Offensive from Kirby Superstar, doesn't it? Anyways, we have ourselves the elevator sequences right here to able to actually deal with these robot-looking zombies, which even then, it takes a amount of shots with the Mega Buster, and I don't know what it is, that sometimes my, bolts can drop through the elevator for some reason, which I don't know if that's the case, but even though that might be seems the case, regrettably. So anyways though, this part's not too bad though, as long as you know what you're doing with the actual pattern, and then as soon as you're able to do enough hits, then you would able to actually deal with it, no problemo whatsoever. So yeah, to get the drill for this point, so anyways, let's go ahead and just deal with the last few set of zombie-like robots, and that way we should be able to actually move along. And then once we're done with that, then we might actually bump into someone, like Bass. Darn, I was careless. Now if you haven't played this on the Super Nintendo original version, he actually says damn instead of darn. I feel so stupid to have been beaten or defeated so easily. Maybe I should give up and leave Wily to you. Or don't you mean Willy? No, we are a team. Dr. Light will be glad to fix you up. Thanks. I'm glad that I have a friend like you. Just like how it does it for my main best friends like Starlight Glimmer, Twilight Sparkle, Fluttershy especially, Rainbow Dash, Pinkie Pie, and Applejack, and Pinkie Pie of course, which even I know enough about that, including Spike as well. But anyways, let's go ahead and use the Wild Coil, so that way we can able to deal with the next Robot Master, in this case the final Robot Master in Mega Man 7, we have Shade Man. He's dressed up as like a somewhat bit of a vampire looking type of robot. But anyways, let's go ahead and deal with him. So basically, his entire boss fight is very simple if you know what you're doing, but the only things you need to be careful of is the forms of how the fact that he can actually suck your health up if you do not manage to know what you're doing with that specific attack. Even though, yeah, if you couldn't tell by this little wavy attack, you get stunned for a few seconds. So, yeah, that's all there is to this guy. I just managed to beat him with only a little bit of health left, just like how it does in the forms of any other Mega Man bosses. Jeez, what was going on these days? So anyways folks, and ladies and gentlemen, we've now finally got ourselves the final weapon in Mega Man 7, and that will have to be in the forms of the Noise Crush, which that could be something related to when we actually get into the final point of the game, because after when you defeat another 4 Robot Masters by the forms of Turbo Man, Slash Man, and Spring Man, and you know, Shade Man, then you would able to actually classify to able to see there was actually a cutscene coming up. So let's see how this scene turns out. Oh no! What was going on here? The Dr. Light, what happened? Is that you, Mega Man? Bass went berserk after I complete his repairs. He stole the parts of the new enhancements. What? Who's responsible for all that? Bass? I can't believe it. Oh, what do you know? It's Dr. Wily. Or Dr. Wily, if you want to be more precise. Believe it, Mega Man, Bass and Treble are my creations. I see how this goes. I know that you would be stupid enough to trust him and allow him access to the lab. Didn't like the sound of that. Now Bass and Treble will use the enhancements meant for you and Rush. Oh boy. Ha 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 ha. I'll make you pay, Wily, or Willy, whatever to be more precise due to the intro. And as you expected, we got ourselves the Wily Fortress stages coming up. But, on the other hand, I'm probably not going to do one just yet for this specific episode, because I'm going back to Shade Man stage, because there's one missing item I could potentially try to grab. So I'll meet you guys just at the right moment, so even then I'll meet you guys at the right point. Oh, I'm back at the forms of that specific pumpkin mini-boss, and now this time around I'm going to be taking a different route this time. And because, the reason being for that is because, well, you normally have the fact that I've already taken the normal, or the lower path to able to actually not only lead us to the forms of the elevator lift sequence, but also by the forms of the fight against, well, with one-on-one fight against with Proto Man himself. But even then though, this time around though, we're going to be taking a different route instead of like the same route from ever since last time, because, well, obviously because we do need to able to actually get something like that. So because of that, I'm going to go for 100% completion, so you guys should know the drill for this point, so yeah. So again, in order to actually get to the normal pathway, just simply keep on his attack, just keep on using the Mecha Buster add to its eyes, well, to be more accurately, the bigger sized version of this pumpkin robot, and as soon as you do with that, then you would able to actually let the pumpkin robot fully self-destruct onto that wall, and able to lead you to this normal pathway of Shade Man. So, not only does it give you health pickups, but also this special item that we can only get with the forms of not only just trying to explore this stage in particular, but also by the forms that need to able to actually access to is Rush Search. Because of that though, we'll get to that shortly after that. And also we come towards these little wolf-like enemies here, which I believe that might be the only time we're actually coming towards these guys, which kind of feels a bit similar to the likes of the actual main enemies in the forms of the Mega Man X games, which I don't know if it's just me. Anyways, if we go down all the way to that ladder, then it will actually lead you to this point here. And as you can see, we got ourselves the Dr. Wily picture frame, or to be more accurately, Dr. Willy. But anyways though, and before we deal with these Orbanzi of robots, and let's go ahead and use Rush Search, and we could able to actually get ourselves the special item that, if you remember the energy balancer from Mega Man 6, that could be only accessed once you're able to actually use the Rush Power Adapter on you, and you would able to explore the Tomahawk stage, or the Tomahawk Man stage, and then you would able to actually just to see Proto Man, the brief appearance from Mega Man 6, and you would able to actually get ourselves an energy balancer. And here we go ourselves the energy liquidizer, which even then, this could be only be helpful if you manage to able to run out of your weapon energy, then you would able to actually just to classify this will be very handy, which again I really do apologize of my lack of description for it, not only because I haven't really used to with the forms of that specific item. So anyways folks, we got the ending stuff at this point right there, so join me next time. Sorry for a little bit of a tangent right there. Join me next time on Let's Play Mega Man 7 for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Is that once again we're going to be taking on Wily Castle stages, or in this case Dr. Willy's castle if you will. So see you guys then. Later fellas.